Hi, and welcome back to English Lessons with Stephanie. Today we're going to have a speaking lesson. We're going to use some of the vocabulary words that we learned this week and talk about things related to our jobs. In today's lesson, we're going to speak a little bit about fluency practice, and that involves setting goals, summarizing, and giving personal information. In this orange box, you'll see some speaking tips, right? Tips means little pieces of advice, things you could do to help yourself. The first is to relax. So how should you relax and why should you relax? Well, it's easier for us to speak when we feel relaxed. And some ways to get yourself relaxed are to take some deep breaths, to get yourself a drink, maybe a cup of coffee or a glass of water. Or if you feel strange talking to a computer, you might feel more relaxed if you pick up your phone and pretend to talk on your phone, or look at a picture of someone and pretend to talk to the picture. Pretend you're talking to that person. When you speak, you should also speak as loudly as you would normally. So many of us, when we're speaking a different language, we want to talk softer. But that's not good practice because it's going to make it harder for you to speak at a normal tone of voice when you want to later. So speak loudly, as loudly as you would normally, or maybe even a little bit louder. And finally, just remember that it's okay to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The thing that's most important is that you are practicing and you are getting better. You're improving. And even native English speakers like myself make mistakes when they're talking, and they just go back and they say it again, and that's totally fine. Okay, so first we're going to set some goals. Ask yourself what you hope to improve. Maybe you want to work on your fluency. Maybe you want to speak more smoothly. You want to make fewer pauses. That means stop less. Maybe you want to work on accuracy. So that means making fewer mistakes when you're speaking. Maybe you want to work on variety. Variety means using different things, so using more vocabulary or different sentence structures, different verb tenses. Or maybe you're a really good English speaker and you want to get even better by mastering your English. That means adding idioms, working on pronunciation. So no matter if you're just a beginning speaker or you're more advanced, there's always ways that you can improve. First, we're going to work on summarizing. Remember that summarizing means giving the main idea. So when we give a main idea, we start with who or what, that's the subject, did what, that's the verb, and so what. That's why is this important. So let's start with what happened in the story you read this week. The story you read this week, remember, was Why I Teach English. When you talk about something that you read, you can use the past or the present tense. The reason why we sometimes use the present tense is because a story, we think of a story as always happening. But because this story was actually something that actually happened, it would be more common to use the past tense. So you might start by saying in the story, plus a subject and a verb, or the story was about a woman who, followed by a verb. So I might say in the story, a person did this, or the story was about a woman who did this. So let's talk. Pause the video and answer this question. What happened in the story you read this week? When you're finished, unpause and we'll move on. Let's do a second summarizing practice. Think about the last movie you saw. Again, you can use the past or present tense, and you can start it in the same way by saying, in the movie, this happened, or the movie was about this. So, for example, the last movie I saw was called Parasite. And in the movie, a poor family moves into a rich family's house, and terrible things happen. Or I could say the movie was about a poor family who moves into a rich family's house and causes terrible things to happen. So you try it now. Pause the video and answer the question, what happened in the last movie you saw? When you're finished, unpause the video and move on. Let's do one last summary practice. Talk about a story that you heard about in the news recently. This is a very useful skill to start conversations about what's happening in the world lately. So for news stories, you could say, I heard that, followed by a subject and a verb, or I heard about, followed by a noun plus a gerund verb. So for example, I could say, I heard that California is going to move on from pandemic restrictions. Right now, there is a coronavirus pandemic, so I heard that California is going to move on. Or you could use the second grammatical structure, I heard about California moving on. You try it. So, pause the video, talk about a story that you heard about in the news recently. Maybe you want to say more than one sentence. So I could say, I heard that this happened, and then give some details. So pause the video, tell us about a story you heard about in the news, and then when you're finished, unpause the video and move on. Next, we're going to work on giving personal information, right? So this week we read a story about why someone learned to teach English. And so you're going to ask yourselves this question. If you have a job, talk about your job. What do you do? What do you like and dislike about your job? If you don't have a job, maybe you can talk about someone you know who has a job. When you're talking about your job, use the present simple tense. Say, I am, I work, or I do. So for example, I would say, I am a teacher, I work at a school, and I create English lessons online, and I correct English papers. When describing what you like, you can say, I like that, plus subject and verb. So for example, I could say, I like that I can help people. I like that I meet new people. And similarly, I dislike that, or I dislike something. Okay, so now you try it. Talk about your job. Try to talk for a minute or so. That seems like a long time, but if you just say a couple sentences, that will be a minute. So pause the video, and when you're finished, unpause it and move on. Let's do some more work with giving personal information. Answer these questions. What kind of work do you think is rewarding? Why? So when giving reasons, you can use the word because. I think teaching is rewarding because it helps people to improve their lives. What kind of work do you think is unrewarding and why? Again, you can use because. And finally, do you think it's important for work to be rewarding? Why or why not? Try to give as many details as you can. So pause the video, answer these questions, and when you're finished, unpause and move on. Here are some other ways to practice giving personal information. Describe your dream job. To answer this, you can use two different kinds of verb tenses. You can say, in my dream job, I would. This is using the conditional verb structure. So for example, I would work outside. Or second, you can use the present simple verb, I work outside. Both of these are okay. So for example, I could say, in my dream job, I work outside, I work with animals, and I get paid a lot. And finally, who do you think has your dream job? Describe someone who has a great job that you would love to have. So let's talk. Pause the video, answer these questions, give as much detail as you can, maybe use examples from your life, and when you're finished, unpause the video. So, great work today, and just keep practicing. Practicing speaking out loud is super important, and it's not the same as just thinking ideas in your head because you don't get to exercise your mouth and practice pronouncing the words. So the more you practice, the easier it will become. How can you keep practicing English by yourself? If you don't have anyone to talk to, well, you can talk to yourself, you can talk to your pets, talk to your friends, just keep practicing. Or, like I said in the beginning, pick up a phone and pretend to talk on the phone. It's just important to keep practicing and exercising those vocal muscles as you try to learn this new language. Thanks for joining us, and come back next week. We'll have new lessons on reading, grammar, listening, writing, and speaking.